So, Fallschirmjäger 90 are often touted as being one of the best infantry killers pound for pound in the entire game, which is a little bit strange considering they're 35 points, they're elites, there's not many more pounds than this, right? We can go into all other sorts of units, other sorts of infantry. 35 is really where it tops out. So, if they're that expensive, how are they still that good? Especially for the price, and especially given the existence of things like, well, not in the elites role, shall we say, but let's go over to rifle, and let's take a look at the 15-point proletary, which, yeah, I mean, these guys might not be any Fallschirmjäger, but they're only 15 points. So, a lot of people will end up using the Fallschirmjäger 90 to sweep and clear things because, trust me, they are just that good. And the question becomes, how many do you use? Do you use 1? Do you use 2? Do you use 3? Do you use 4? The risk goes up the more you have in one place of something like getting Kurnost or getting Nighthawked or any other thing that insta-deletes your infantry ends up being a really, really big thing to watch out for. And so normally you'll see people advocate the double squad method. So in most situations, people will put their infantry in groups of 2, and sometimes that's not true. Sometimes you'll see, especially on the higher ends of gameplay, you'll see people making really good use out of single stacks of infantry of various types, including elites, including Fallschirmjäger 90 and things like that. But generally speaking, the sort of middle of the pack, and one of the most important things that gets you out of that beginner bracket, is learning to use these guys in stacks of 2. And I'm going to show you one of the exceptions to when that is the best case, and it's one of those exceptions that takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of time to wrap your head around. I think, I don't know if you guys will share that same opinion, but I want to show you the power of using that triple stack correctly. Okay, so here we are inside of a 2v2 tournament game that will be up on the channel in its own right, and not terribly long. This game was actually just played earlier on, earlier on this evening. And I have a triple stack of Fallschirmjäger 90, and there's a double stack of Fallschirmjäger 90 coming in from Keyhow, and I see them right there. So right there, they're spotted. I know that they're there. He knows that my Fallschirmjäger 90 are here. You can tell they're very damaged. They've been in a fair amount of combat. I've been shelled. I've been engaged. In fact, I've been engaged by other Fallschirmjäger 90 that were up here previously, and we got a favorable engagement there. But that's not the one that I want to point out. This is the one that I want to point out explicitly because my opponent Keyhow 56's Fallschirmjäger 90 are entirely healthy. There are 2 stacks of 10 here. Mine, between the 3 of them, have 17 men left. So we have, 4 represented on the first one, 6 on the other, and then for whatever reason only 5 on the third, which, yeah, that adds to 15, not 17, but sometimes Eugen does weird things. And what I want you to notice here is that my Fallschirmjäger 90 are calm. So earlier when they were engaged, I moved them back, they settled down back to calm, and then I moved up forward again to re-engage. So let's watch what happens here, because my opponent wants to engage my Fallschirmjäger 90 with his. He's moving into the town closer explicitly to get that engagement, with the idea being that the 2 healthy falls will kill the 3 damaged falls. Now I pop over to here, he pops over there. I popped over this way because I figured it would intercept him. Most people move from this block into this block, and yeah, from this right side in here, you can sometimes spend a little bit of time walking. It's not the best, but let's look at what happens. Immediately, we each take 1, and just keep an eye on the stuns and on the morale effects. So both of his are still calm. 1 flips to worried. All 3 of mine are still calm. And look at that. I mean, yeah, I've taken 7 points of damage. He's taken 10. And he's panicked shaken. I'm worried and calm. So my Fallschirmjäger 90 are still shooting at 60 to 80% accuracy on their tertiary, 80+% accuracy on their main, and his infantry are down to 47% on their tertiary, and they're stunned right now, which means mine are dealing damage and his are not. This is one of the cases where 3 Falls 90 really just outweighs 2, and 3 of any comparable infantry would outweigh 2 in this sort of fight, because of the additional DPS, yes, but also because of the additional suppression. So every single weapon that you see in the game, every single tertiary at least, has a suppression value. And for Fallschirmjäger 90, it's 55. And if you're getting into the game and you're not really used to comparing these sorts of things, or if you haven't looked at where some of the code on this has been sort of disentangled and what this actually means, that may be unfamiliar to you, but at least we know that 3 times 55 is greater than 2 times 55, and so 3 of the equivalent gun shooting deal more suppression than 2 of the equivalent gun shooting, especially when they're hitting more often as well. The suppression doesn't have to be a direct hit all the time, it can also be nearby. Wargame's a funny game, but once that stun is in, my triple stack is no longer really in much danger. So we stay at 10 for a while, we suppress them down again, and even though that initial DPS was pretty similar. Well, my falls had a little bit better. Once that first stun hits, my guys are in the clear, and they only ever sank to worried as well. They never got into shaken, they never got into panics, they never got stunned, because the time when their opponents were stunned allowed them to have some time to recover from the own suppression that they were taking. So, town fights where you know you're going to be fighting against elite infantry or shock infantry or things like that, one of the times to use a triple stack if you can stay away from things like bombers, if you can stay away from things like 10 HE arty. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It is a really nice way to lose points if it's not microed correctly, and let me just say, that very nearly did not go my way. A little bit extra damage on the Fallschirm Jaeger 90, and I would have had to avoid, so it was a bit of a calculated risk, but that's how Wargame is. It's a bunch of calculated risks, one after another, and that one was a good bet.